Listen up, Nerf herders. Today we're painting Princess Leia for Star Wars Legion. So let's float through space and do some hobby. So this is Leia as she comes out of the Echo Base Defenders box. Pretty simple model, just her body and arms. So we're going to clean up the mold line that runs all around those parts and then use some super glue to attach her arms into the slots in her body. Then I primed her in Wraithbone, and first paint I'm going to use is Space Wolves Grey. Now I use a wet palette, so when I put the Space Wolves Grey on, it kind of diluted it a bit more than I wanted. So I'm going to put this first layer on and then come back later and put a second layer on to make the colors a bit brighter. Second is Militarum Green, so I'm going to paint her vest in that. So just go around and make sure it gets into all of the cracks and crevices and does its work shading and highlighting the model in one pass. Then I'm going to go and put a second layer of Space Wolves Grey on her pants. Next, I'm going to use some Wraithbone to clean up any of the parts of the model where I overspilled, so the little stripe running down her leg. And then I'm going to use two paints, so starting off with Skeleton Horde for her shirt, and then I'm going to go over the top of that with some Battle Mud Wash. I just thought that the Skeleton Horde was a bit too yellow compared to the reference pics that I used for Leia, so using a wash over the top of that will bring it down a bit and make it more brown than yellow. Looking back on this, I think it would have been fine with the Skeleton Horde, but anyway, this is what I've done for her shirt to make it look somewhat like the reference pics that I was using. Trying to keep it accurate while still providing enough brightness to make it stand out on the tabletop. Next, I'm using some Dark Angels Green, and I'm just going to put that fairly heavily over her belt. Again, this is the reference photo. Apparently her belt is green, not brown. And then I'm going to use some Ionden Yellow for the stripes on her pants. I've just made a mistake there, so I'll have to clean that up later. Again, in the reference photo, it's more of a beige stripe than yellow, but I did want to make it stand out on the tabletop a bit. Next is Snakebite Leather to paint the soles of her boots. Could easily just have done her whole boots in black. It probably wouldn't have made that much difference. So speaking of black, I'm now going to use Black Templar. This is probably my favorite contrast paint. It does a really good job of providing a good highlight for black, which is typically pretty hard to get right using just regular techniques. So I'm painting her boots, her leather pouches, and also her blaster in the black. Then once that's dry, I'm going to use Leadbelcher and Nuln Oil just to pick out some little details like her belt buckle, and I think I'm also going to paint just a few parts of her blaster, like parts of the barrel, just so it's not a one color monotonous black. So once I've done that, I'm going to use Nuln Oil to dull it down and give it some shading. And once we're done with the rest of Leia, we can move on to her skin and face. So Guilliman Flesh is what I use for her skin. So you just want to put that on fairly liberally and make sure that it gets all into the crevices and then draws out smoothly across her face. So I'm going to do that with her face and arms. And then I'm going to use Wildwood to paint her hair. Once you finish with this part, you can just stop there and have a really good looking model, but I wanted to keep going, so I'm using the Wildwood now to try and paint her eyebrows. She does have sculpted eyebrows, so you just sort of run a small brush across lines like that. So you want to keep as steady as possible, so put your fingers together and create a lot of contact points. Next, her eyes. So using the same steadying techniques, I'm going to put a little bit of black to fill her eye sockets. so just be very careful and patient, and with practice this will get better. Then I'm going to use some white to just put a smaller line inside that line. To be honest, I made a few mistakes and had to go back several times to try and get this right. And then lastly, with that white, I'm just going to try and put a little dot of black into the middle of the eye. So you can see her left eye looks a bit bruised at the moment, so I had to go back later and try and smooth out where I have made the mistakes on her eye. Then lastly, I'm going to thin down some Volupus pink for her lips. Then we just need to attach her to the base, and Leia is ready to lead your armies. So hopefully you found that useful, and long live the rebellion.